Welcome to the Isobar, where low pressure is as much a vibe as it is a forecast. Yes, you've joined the one and only regional weather podcast, co-hosted by myself, Chief Meteorologist Rob Haswell, Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls down in Chicago, and Chief Meteorologist Rich Luderman over in Detroit. How are you guys?
We are good. Cold, but we're good.
Very good and very cold. Absolutely, for sure. Appreciate you jumping on here because it has been a busy fortnight since last we talked. So many things to get to, but let's start with the cold. And I want to start out in Detroit because we were chatting before the show here, Rich, and some near record numbers for you over there in Michigan.
Flint, Michigan, which is, really one county north of where I am right now in Oakland County. But last weekend, Flint, Michigan bottomed out at 24 below zero. That's not a wind chill. That was an actual number. And that was within 1 degree of their all-time record low. Whew. With the fresh snowpack and the long nights and the dew points way down there. I mean, it just all came together that night for Flint to really get low. At Metro Airport, which is the official, recording station near Detroit, we got down to 10 below. So 10 below in Oakland County or Wayne County, 24 below up in Genesee County. Very impressive. Very impressive.
Yeah, some incredible chills. Of course, Chicago is also very cold.
Very cold, yes. We didn't come close to our all-time record low, which actually was 27 degrees below zero, set way back in the 80s, the mid-80s, 85. But we still have been very cold, especially once you factor in the wind. So, the end of last week, so right around the 19th, 20th of January, we were dealing with wind chills here in Chicago, about 30 to 35 degrees below zero in some locations. And, Rich, we take the brunt of it over on this side of the lake, and then we kind of warm it up. The air mass warms it up a little bit as it goes over Lake Michigan, heading your way. But regardless, it's been cold for all of us. We didn't have any record low temperatures, though, here in the Chicago area, although we were very, very close. It was the wind that got us. You hear that all the time in the Midwest, right? If it wasn't for the wind. But that's what's been getting us. And it's still getting us out there this week, too. So we're still dealing with wind chill temperatures that are below zero. And that's going to continue for much of this week as well, especially during the overnights.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, similar conditions up here in Milwaukee, very close to, but not quite record-breaking temperatures or wind chills for that matter. I mean, we definitely have had some bitterly cold wind chills, but not quite record makers. However, this is the first time really in about 7 years. Got to go back to 2019 for us, and I would imagine down in Chicago as well, to get similar numbers. So I think it hit pretty hard in part because it has been a minute since we've had this kind of cold, and it's certainly been an even longer minute since we've stayed cold for this long, and it really wears on the human body. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little bit extra grumpy. I'm not normally a grumpy guy, but it's wearing on me. What do you think, Rich?
It does take a toll. And I think that's part of the story. It's not just a day of cold or 2 days of cold, but I think, over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, I think collectively for people, we're professionals and this is our business, but, for school kids and for teachers and for people that have to commute and for everyone, I think everyone feels it day after day after day, and it does wear on us a bit. The optimist, I'm always thinking like, well, this Sunday is February 1st, so that's good. I mean, that's a good thing, and then the Super Bowl is just after that. That's a good thing. So we are making progress, but no, Rob, Emily, this long duration cold event is taking a toll without question.
It really does. It takes a toll on human health. And tragically for some, it has been a deadly cold snap. I know that's been a significant problem in the Chicago area.
Yeah, we actually, unfortunately, just had our 10th cold weather related death of this year already. And, we're not even through the first month of the year. So it's been extremely cold. And in an urban area, a lot of folks walk everywhere. There's a lot of people that don't even have vehicles. They take public transit. So you're, of course, waiting outside for the bus, the trains, or, possibly your taxi, your Uber, whatever it is that you're taking. But a lot of folks walk everywhere. And I'm somebody that I typically walk everywhere. We walk to the grocery store, we walk my daughter to school every day. We don't use my car. But we've been using the car or choosing to Uber just about everywhere because it's too cold for my little one to be out and about, So
Yeah.
unfortunately too, that costs money, right? So it's walking is free. So that's another barrier for a lot of folks that get around the city, that typically rely on walking as their form of transportation or biking. When the roads
Right.
aren't clear, they're icy, we're cold enough to where salt really isn't that effective right now without the sun.
Mhm.
Fortunately, we've had some sun here in the Chicago area. But regardless, bike lanes, they're not cleared. And that's a really large way that a lot of folks get around.
Yeah, absolutely. And it hits a huge impact and hits a little harder for those, who call the outdoors home, the unhoused or the homeless
Mhm.
population in all of our cities is getting hit much harder by this. And, all of our areas have opened up warming shelters and expanded the capacity of some of the shelters and the housing opportunities there. But it's still very, very challenging for those folks who are unhoused or underhoused. I mean, think about those folks who are fortunate to have a place to live, but their bills to keep those places warm are going to go through the roof compared to what they have had in the last little while.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I'm sorry, Emily. Go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Absolutely. That's money, unfortunately, that really does come into play when you're talking about the winter months and when you
Mhm.
have no choice but to run the heat, right? You're not going to hopefully sit in a home if you don't have to that's in the 50s, but it's it's something that a lot of folks I think end up going in the red with when they get those bills
Right.
come February or the next month, and then you're stuck digging your way out of it, and it's difficult time for a lot of people.
For sure. And Rich, Detroit has all those beautiful homes that the older homes that are wonderful and so many of them need some work, but a lot of them of course don't have the energy efficiency of the more modern homes.
I mean, this was auto baron central, at the turn of the
Hmm.
century. All of the great minds in the automotive industry were here. And there are beautiful homes over on Jefferson Avenue, and Emily knows this all too well. Uh, Jefferson Avenue, St. Clair Shores with Grosse Points. I mean, it's stunningly beautiful. But this time of year when you look out and see the Lake St. Clair, and it's completely frozen over, and you see the ice fishing shanties out there, and it's a whole different ballgame. I wanted to say one thing, and we'll probably hit on it, but this big storm that we've had, this last weekend, this
Hmm.
3 day storm, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're dealing with the cold and some snow, but you see these areas affected by the ice, and it is debilitating. When you see parts of Virginia and Tennessee, Arkansas, where they don't see it very often, but on occasion they do. They see these great ice storms down south.
Right.
It's just tough to watch. It's tough to
Yeah.
watch.
It is, and we'll definitely go deeper on that in just a bit here. But before we leave the cold behind as a general topic, I just noticed earlier this morning some incredible water main breaks. Speaking of ice in Detroit, and it's flooded streets and just ice chunks everywhere. Rich.
You know, some of the water mains and water pipes in downtown Detroit are more than 100 years old. You know,
Wow.
this is old infrastructure here in
Mhm.
Detroit. Not necessarily a bad thing. It just is what it is. So we do stories almost every day about some of the infrastructure and what happens to it. And it's not so much the cold, but it's the fact that 2 weeks ago we were near 50 degrees, and now we're stuck in a deep freeze. So it's not just the cold, but it's the swings that
Yeah.
also affects the infrastructure. And again, it can be days or even weeks to get it remedied and get it repaired and put back into business. So many different angles of misery, in
Yep.
the winter in the Great Lakes. And that's true for all of the cities, from the
Sure.
Buffalo to Cleveland, Detroit, obviously where you guys live, Chicago and Green Bay. It's all about the
Mhm.
same.
Well, we had a water pipe burst in the newsroom here at our
Oh,
Milwaukee
Oh
station.
no.
Fortunately, we had a lot of handy folks rush in there to fix things up pretty quickly and no significant damage. But it's just a reminder, that this is the stuff that people are dealing with in their homes as well in this cold. Now, before we leave cold as a topic, we have to address this because the whole social media world, the universe of social media, was talking about exploding trees. And we all went a little crazy answering comments and dealing with this. It did lead, I think, to a good conversation, which is what, we've talked about on this podcast before, even though sometimes these social media trends are a little out there in left field. And this one was like outside the ballpark outside, but it still had a great conversation because frost cracking is real. Trees do suffer from this cold.
Yeah, exploding trees just sounds a little more exciting. And, so it's no wonder stuff like that really takes off on social media. Everybody's talking about it. But yes, I learned a ton about trees through all of this. I had always known of frost cracking and, ice quakes, things like that. But when I first heard exploding trees too, I was like, is that what we're calling this now? Is this okay? And then it confuses people because everybody was envisioning trees just literally exploding. And of course, that's not what happened. But I didn't hear any exploding trees in my neck of the woods. But we did have reports of ice quakes. So that was something that folks got excited about.
Any exploding trees for you, Rich?
Well, no, but I do have a story.
Okay.
Years ago, when we had the big dog, her name was Indy, and she was a big husky shepherd idiot mix. She was equal parts shepherd, husky, and idiot. But she was a very good dog. But she used to love these cold, harsh days. I mean, that was really her favorite thing. So for a treat, I would take her to one of the state parks, and Emily may know of Proud Lake State Park. It's out in Proud Township. Beautiful. I mean, it's 5,000 acres, and there's a lot of treed parts of this state campground and state park. And more than once, I have heard falling trees, in the wintertime. Like you'll hear a dead tree fall. It's a very scary thing when you're out there in the woods, walking the dog, and then you hear this great crash. And even if it's, 300-400 yards away, it makes a tremendous sound. And it's something that I'll never forget. It's locked into my brain, that sound of, 40 and 50-foot trees falling and hearing that sound. Yeah, very, very interesting.
All right. So not quite exploding, but yes, it is kind of a dramatic situation. It is nice that we all got a chance to talk about it. Unfortunate that I think it turned an already cool thing into somehow of a disappointment because nobody's trees blew up, but it was kind of a good conversation to be had, and we are all now officially marked safe from exploding trees. So that's good. However, there is about 2/3 of the country still dealing with that massive storm. So, some of the cold that we had up here in Milwaukee, I kept telling people here, it could be worse. If you were farther south, like Rich was talking about with the ice, or even just down the road for you in Chicago, Emily, you got hit with a lot more snow than we did.
And the system snow that came through associated with that, it was really only about 2 to 3 inches for most of the area. It was Lake Michigan that got us. Good old Lake Michigan. So we had those winds turning in out of the northeast. And then we had this one lake effect band that just parked itself right over downtown Chicago. So oftentimes, there's a lot of folks in Chicago that really, really love the snow, and we get really jealous of Northwest Indiana because typically, that's the hot spot for the lake effect most oftentimes because we have the northwesterly winds more often than we have northeasterly winds. But it was Chicago's turn this last time around. So not only did we have the system snow, which gave us about 2 to 3 inches, then we added on the lake effect. Downtown Chicago actually had the highest total of anywhere within the Chicagoland area. Wow. We marked 10.5 inches that came down in the loop. So immediately downtown. It was a lot to clean up, but I do have to say, it was the most stunning snowfall because we had those snow ratios that were about 20-1, which means it's very fluffy, very airy. I mean, I went out to my balcony and I just kind of picked it up, and it was the type of snow that you could just blow away. It was beautiful. So cleanup efforts, it was actually, I think, easier on a lot of folks because it wasn't that heavy heart attack snow that we talk about. It was very
leaf blowers running down.
Yeah, there were a lot of folks that were actually letting me know on social media that they used their leaf blower to just blow it away from their driveways. So it was a pretty snow, and I don't think too many people were too mad about it. It's the cold that everyone's griping about.
Yeah, for sure. Now Detroit got a little bit more of that system snow.
We didn't get much lake effect on the backside, but for the system snow, Detroit Metro Airport had 4.8. So there were a lot of 4s and 5s in southeast Michigan. There were some spots that had 6 near the Michigan-Ohio border region, but You know what's interesting, and both of you know this, how every storm, large or small, has its own personality. Like they're all a little different.
Hmm.
And this one was a large 3-dayer, from New Mexico and Texas, and then make the big turn up into the Mid-Atlantic, the Ohio River Valley, of course, the Great Lakes. It's interesting how they all have different personalities. Where that heavy snow band is going to be. Where is that freezing rain or sleet area going to be? Where is the high winds going to be? Where is the lake effect going to be on the backside? They're all different. And I find it very interesting that they all, have their own nuances, storm in and storm out.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think you're right. And this one of the personality points for it was, as you mentioned earlier in the show, the ice, the visuals, Rich. It's unbelievable.
It's hard to watch because there were a couple years ago where we had the big ice storm up in northern lower Michigan around Gaylord and Alpena. I mean, they got clobbered with a late winter season ice storm up there. But thankfully, that doesn't happen all that often. It doesn't happen all that often down south, but it really doesn't happen all that often here in the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, all the things line up right to give us one of those big debilitating ice storms. And for the three of us, we just hate to see it wherever it is.
Right, because it can be so destructive. And this was, we're talking about ice that was not just a coating. It was, coming up on an inch or so worth of ice and taking down mature trees. You want exploding trees. It's ice, not cold, because it just brings those things down like crazy for sure. And the video that's coming out of that part of the country is just, kind of stunning. It's a weird, like beautiful tragedy because before the destruction of the limbs tearing down and the trees falling down, it just looks like something out of the movie Frozen. And then all of a sudden, power lines come down and trees come down and you hit a certain weight and it just can't hold it anymore. So feeling for those folks. And obviously the infrastructure isn't there, as Rich pointed out. Fun story from Wisconsin here. And I'm sure maybe you've heard of similar stories out of Illinois and Michigan. We had some local snowplow folks decide, since we were just sitting in the cold with very little snow to plow, they loaded up the plows, and one local guy drove all the way down to Kentucky to volunteer his services, did some plowing on residential roads, helped some folks out, did what he could with the salting, even though we've got a bit of a salt shortage here, and got paid apparently in cookies mostly. So he was happy with that.
Hmm. That is also the payment that I accept. So
Yeah, that's right. We will all accept cookies for a good forecast, will we not? All right, so from one type of ice to another, though, the Great Lakes ice. We talked about this on our last edition, and man, how things have changed out there on the Great Lakes. Richie, were saying Lake St. Clair's frozen over.
Lake St. Clair is frozen over. Most of Lake Erie is frozen over. The connecting channels, the connecting rivers, St. Clair River and Detroit River, there's quite a bit of ice. And, I don't want to promote another avenue, but for people who want to just see it, there are YouTube channels that have live cameras, in all of the cities across America. But there are live cameras along the St. Clair River, and there's one specifically along the Detroit River. And just to see the ice, it's something to see. And I know, Emily, you're from that part of Michigan, so you've seen it your whole life. It is very impressive. And then when you see the Canadian and the U.S. Coast Guard boats out there doing their work, boy, we've done stories here in Detroit about, the men and women in the Coast Guard. And one of the side stories is that when they're actively breaking ice, it's very loud because they're in the ship and the ships are, breaking the ice, and no one gets any sleep because it's a loud thing. And, try and work hard, arduous hours and not get any sleep because of the noise. It sounds pretty tough.
Yeah, I can't only imagine what that sound must be like for sure. It is an incredible job. Down the southern portion of Lake Michigan, you've definitely seen some ice expansion, certainly up in the Milwaukee area and farther north all the way up to Door County. Quite a bit more ice than the last time we talked. Do things look a lot different from your point of view, Emily?
they finally look a lot different. So over the last week or so, it's been really incredible just to see the ice expansion that we can see, even just from our sky cams that we have looking over the water. But I do have breaking news here. We actually had some floating ice, some pancake ice that came in from Lake Michigan to the Chicago River. So we have finally joined the club of having ice on the river downtown. Not a lot, but some. And I love that view so much. It just looks so beautiful. And we usually have to wait a little extra time to start to see that downtown Chicago. So it was a really exciting thing a few days ago, actually, when we finally started noticing some, not a lot, but some ice that was beginning to move into the river. So that was exciting.
There you go. Well, if you like river ice, you can just come visit me here in Milwaukee. Our three beautiful rivers that come together in the city are definitely filled with ice. Plus, you get to use the phrase Kinnickinnick because one of the rivers is named Kinnickinnick, and that's just
Oh,
fun
well,
to
that's
say.
a fun word.
Yeah, it is a
Wow.
fun word. It
Yeah.
sometimes takes a little bit of effort to say it correctly, particularly on live TV. But you're right. Yeah, the rivers, the lakeshore here certainly has changed quite a bit in the last little while, and we'll continue to see that ice grow for a little bit as well.
One
Now,
last thing, Rob.
that's-
One last thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing the winter ice. Because it's been rather dry. If you look at the last 4 or 5 months with rain and snowfall, we're still kind of dry. So getting a good ice pack on the Great Lakes is actually a helpful thing.
Very
For
true.
spring runoff, as long as it happens slowly. So I suspect because of the forecast for the next couple of weeks, I mean, we're going to see even more and more ice on the Great Lakes, and it's interesting. It certainly is.
Yeah, and ice on other things near and in the Great Lakes too, because we've had a lot of freezing spray advisories and watches and warnings and things like
Yep.
that. I saw some great video of the St. Joseph Lighthouse just completely coated in ice.
So stunning. Those are my favorite photos that come out of the Great Lakes region during the winter time. It's just it's amazing how thick the ice is able to get and accumulate on those lighthouses and on the piers, but just incredible. And it also is a testament to how windy it's been, because you can see on the lighthouses those ice sculptures, almost. I'll call them sculptures because they just like go with the wind. It's so cool.
Yeah, it is really a beautiful scene for sure.
It's like a pure Great Lakes thing, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't really see that in Kansas or you don't see that in Georgia, but in the Great Lakes, the wind, the cold, the snow, the spray, it's fascinating to look at and to think about. And, once or twice over the years, I've been out there. Once specifically, I can remember Niagara Falls, where all the spray is continuously happening, because of the mist from the falls. And some of the ice gets really thick in and around Buffalo and Niagara Falls, they can last for, weeks or months at a time. Fascinating.
Absolutely. And look at Rich working in another pure Michigan plug there.
Oh, yeah. Well, pure Great Lakes. Pure Great Lakes.
All right. Well, in our last couple of minutes here, I want to look ahead. There is some maybe short-term improvement here, but I kind of brought out what they call week 3 and week 4 outlooks just to see if we can, kind of get inching toward meteorological spring, if nothing else. Not seeing a whole lot of hope there, but even returning to average at this point, guys, would be an improvement.
It would be a huge improvement. I mean, recently we had temperatures that were just barely above zero, and that felt like a heat wave. So if we could get to near average, which for us here in the Chicago area is right around 31 degrees, 32 degrees. So if we could get back up to near freezing, I think, I would put money on it that I could come to work and see people walking around in probably shorts and a sweatshirt. We're ready for normal after this stretch. But it's looking, the next couple of weeks, so I think we're inching our way there. And you had mentioned the 3 to 4 week outlook, and we're not really leaning any which way as far as the temperatures. But at this point, we'll take that. Get the blue shading on those maps away from us.
At least we could bring the trend back, away from never-ending cold.
Yes.
Like you were saying, Rich, it's the duration of this as much as the intensity. So even if the 3 and 4 week outlook is a little bit more 2 cold days, 2 warm days, it'll be great.
If and when we do our next episode, in a couple weeks, if it so happens to be that day is like 35 or 40 degrees, we're going to have these like big smiles on our face because that first 40-degree day is going to feel really great in the wake of this long, cold stretch. So it's going to happen. It may take another week or 10 days, but it is going to happen, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think we are all looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to talking with you guys again in a couple of weeks. It has been a great chat today. So I thank you both. And I thank everybody for joining us here for yet another edition of the Isobar, the highs and lows of meteorology.